Thank you. And I understand over here is who I need to impress to have a good point. I've been watching in the back. Okay, this gentleman right here. Okay, pressure is on for me to have some good points. How many of you are familiar with Capital Resource Institute? Good. We have a table, so I want you to go sign up for our emails so you can get our alerts, but I'm here to talk about my favorite subject, bathrooms. And the bathroom bill. It's funny, I got a call from a reporter after the Planned Parenthood issue came out, and he said, "You are the first person I thought about when I thought about Planned Parenthood." And I said, "Oh, well, usually it's bathrooms when people think about me. They think about co-ed bathrooms." So how many of you are familiar with the law that passed, AB 1266, that mandated co-ed locker rooms, bathrooms, all facilities, overnight trips for our kids in public school? Okay, so AB 1266, almost 2 years ago, was signed into law. August, it will be 2 years. And what happened was, we have in California what is often talked about as the people's veto, and we will have, Tim Donnelly is going to speak about that. But the people's veto is something that allows the people to gather signatures on a bad law, submit the signatures, and then take the vote to the people, and they can be the ultimate veto on the piece of legislation. So AB 1266 was introduced, signed, dealt specifically with bathrooms. You just have to identify as the opposite gender, so I just have to wake up, and believe you me, I was trouble in high school, so I would have done it. You wake up, decide that you're the other gender, and you have access to the facilities, no questions asked. Kindergarten through 12th grade. Over-school field trip. So your 8th grade science trip, you are now rooming with someone who perceives themselves to be the opposite gender, or your children are. So we filed a referendum. Gina was the proponent. Yep. Yeah, we'll give it up for Gina. Gina, we are still in court. So that issue is still ongoing. We collected in 75 days over 620,000 signatures. And when I say we, I mean we. There is no real lobby for the family. It was us. There's no big business interest. It was Calvary Chapel going out Chino Hills and collecting 46,000 signatures. It was Pastor Jack at Target. It was you guys doing the precinct walk. It was other ministries and churches, the Tea Party, setting up tables for weeks and coordinating their own schedule in front of Lowe's up in Roseville. So it was we, the people, that collected those signatures. We collected over 400,000 of which were volunteer. Unprecedented in the history of California to collect that many volunteer signatures. So we're in court because they threw out signatures. They said, for instance, they said this person isn't registered. Gina and I go in the next morning. We look it up. The person has been registered to vote since 2010. One of our legal counsel, Matt McReynolds, they said that wasn't his signature. You know, all of it. So there are lots of signatures they threw out. They said we were 17,000 short. We believe we have them. We are in court. We have a really good legal team, and we believe that we will win and that that issue will be on the 2016 ballot. But in the meantime, there has been this trend going on in lots of city councils about all government buildings, opening them up to opposite gender. And we believe privacy should be protected whether you're 8, 18, or 80. When you go into a restroom or a locker room, you should not be encountered by someone of the opposite biological gender. It is gender reality, not gender identity. And that's what our tax dollars in those government buildings should be for. So Pastor Jack and Gina are the proponents of the new initiative, Privacy for All, and you can go to privacyforall.com, and you can sign up for our emails. You can download a a petition that is just a single signature. You can order petitions. We have a table here where you can pick up petitions in order to take them back to your church or your ministry and gather signatures. Again, we don't have any big business that's going to come in and write us a $5 million check and we're going to get paid signature gatherers on the street. We're going to have to go out and be on the street and get active in collecting these signatures if we want to get this on the ballot in 2016. In addition to government buildings, it also says that businesses can choose what policy they want, but if they don't have to do gender-neutral restrooms. That doesn't have to be forced upon them. So it's kind of libertarian in its whole idea of, we're not telling big business what to do, but we're protecting them at the same time so that they won't be forced to, because who wants to go in the dressing room at Nordstrom's and be encountered by the opposite gender? And I'm going to be careful in case media or spies are here. So this time around, because of voter turnout, our numbers are much lower. We only need to get about 366,000 signatures, and we have more than double the time. We have 150 days. So we have to gather 366,000. Keep in mind, we did 400,000 just volunteer in 75 days. So it's very doable. With your help, we have until November 20th in order to get it done. On the website, Privacy for All, we have materials in Russian, Spanish, Chinese, Korean. If I'm missing a language and there's a community you need, just get in touch with our office and we will be happy to put some stuff together. But we want to be able to get the word out to everyone that this is important. We need to sign this petition and then it'll be on the ballot in 2016 and we will get to decide if we're going to be a gender-neutral society when it comes to accessing our facilities. This is not an issue. Recently, I've been getting a lot of phone calls, as you can imagine, and lots of hate phone calls, which are always tolerant. And it's interesting because I don't know how all of a sudden being modest has become hate. Wanting to have some privacy when I go into a restroom or take my granddaughter into a restroom is not the same as hate. It's common sense. And so we can't be bullied into being told that, that we're haters and that, everything's okay with, Bruce Jenner. I'm not going to say Caitlyn Jenner, but Bruce Jenner. And so it's important that we stand up. If we, the church, and if we as conservatives aren't going to protect our bathrooms, especially for our daughters, then what are we going to do? This is something that everyone can rally around. This is a nonpartisan issue. Our polling is off the charts as far as people that agree with us. They're just afraid to speak out. So I want to encourage you to visit our table. Go to privacyforall.com. I'll be at the table later this afternoon, and please get engaged. Please take the petition out of your bag, sign it, and turn it in before you go home. Get on the email list and commit to getting signatures, whether it's 5 in your Bible study or 500 from your church. We need you to get active. If not now, when? If not you, who? It's us. We need to do this. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tim Donnelly, former California State Assemblyman and gubernatorial candidate. Yeah, you're supposed to clap. And I find myself, I'm also the host of the Tim Donnelly Show, where 3 hours a day, from 3 to 6 p.m. weekdays, we inform, educate, and engage. And when I heard there was an Engage California 2015 conference, I did a little jig and called Gina and said, can I be involved in this, because this is amazing. And I want to thank you, all of you, for coming out, because you're spending your Saturday doing something more important than golfing. And I'm working on a statewide referendum against the forced vaccination bill, SB 277. Now, when I first heard of forced vaccinations, I was in the assembly. It was AB 2109, and we noticed a disturbing trend on my Facebook page. All of these hippie chick Obama lovers were starting to like my page. And I was afraid they might be deeply offended by the fact that I speak the truth. But what we discovered was that they were deeply offended and upset and beginning to organize against a government that they began to see was the greatest threat to their freedom, their future, their family, and their faith. And I was on the phone yesterday with someone who just signed up to be the organizer in Orange County. We've already organized more than half the state in 72 hours. We have 10,000 people who have signed up or indicated they'll either gather signatures, sign the petition, or donate. Without asking for a penny, we've already raised enough money to print 100,000 petitions. And where else would I pick up my petitions but Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills? So I signed mine at the table in the gymnasium, and I expect and hope that each of you would do that. And look, I want to be very clear. This issue is not about how you feel about vaccines. Because look, I vaccinated my kids. But I did so after I did a lot of research, and then I made an informed decision, and I was still terrified that something might happen to my son. If I had to do that over again with what I now know about what is in vaccines, and given that some vaccines may be safe singularly, if that's all you took, but we give 69 courses while your child goes from 0 to 18, and some of those courses are in a very, very short time span, and so you have massive amounts of chemicals going into the body, but nobody ever wants to talk about side effects. And I think that's a great way to talk to your friends who might not understand this and say, look, if you were doing an advertisement for Viagra, right? We all see those more than we want, right? There's all kinds of side effects, and they have to tell you about them on TV. That's why you hit the mute button, right? And you've heard of other, let's say medications for rheumatoid arthritis. I listen to it, and it's like vomiting, nausea, diarrhea, possible death. And a whole lot of other ugly things in between. But the government doesn't force you to take rheumatoid arthritis or Viagra, do they? But they are forced and mandated to tell you the side effects anytime they advertise them. The government is mandating and forcing everyone that wants to have their child in a public or private school setting, whether it's a charter school or a daycare, to vaccinate their children. And if they miss a single vaccine, if there's one that they have chosen to opt out, they're considered unvaccinated. And this all happened because of the measles outbreak. And we all know that the left never misses a crisis, because the bottom line is, don't let a crisis go to waste. So what they did is they looked around the state and they said, how can we grow government? How can we tell the people that we care about them? Let's make the people feel safer, because SB 277 doesn't make a single person in the state of California safer. Because if you study the measles outbreak, and I did, the CDC has stated they believe that a foreign visitor to the United States, whether this person came legally or illegally, they did go to Disneyland, as do millions of people every year, and that person reintroduced measles into the United States, something that the CDC claims we wiped out in the year 2000. Now, does SB 277, by preventing children from going to public or private school or daycare, does that going to prevent the next outbreak at Disneyland or the supermarket or the park or your favorite ball field? No, it isn't. There's no way that it will. Vaccinations in and of themselves do not prevent diseases. Many people who got the measles in this recent outbreak were vaccinated, and they transferred that disease onto other people. So the bottom line is that they are going after the wrong culprit, but the key issue is whether or not the state should have more control over your child's health care and health decisions than you. And let me tell you, I am now organizing liberal Democrats across the state of California who are deeply offended by this bill. They are joining together with Christian conservatives, Tea Party groups, Republicans. And not everybody messages it the same. In the liberal community, the word pro-choice or choice is very significant. In our community, a parent's right, God gave children to parents, not to the state. But every one of these bills and every one of these issues, we see the state encroaching and the government beginning to exercise more and more and more control over our children, not only over what they consume in school and what they try to indoctrinate our kids with, but now they want to force us to inject them with something, or they lose what in California is a constitutional right to a free public education. And for a lot of liberal Democrats, that is a major talking point. And so all I'm going to say is if you join this effort, you will notice that I'm not wearing a hat. And any of you who follow me on Facebook know that I usually wear my NRA hat everywhere. I had it on at a Hollywood premiere in a tuxedo the other day, okay? But I agreed to take that hat off, and I've asked every one of the people gathering signatures to defend parents' rights, to defend religious liberty, to defend the right of a parent to have more control and make informed decisions on behalf of their children, to set aside all of their other beliefs when engaging on this effort. Now, I believe by interacting with each other that we will be the salt and light. And God will speak through us and use us in ways that we cannot imagine right now. I am excited to be involved in this effort. If you want to join me in it, please go to sb277referendum.com. We're on Facebook, we're on the web, and we are in the gymnasium over there with a wonderful booth right near Capitol Resource Center. We could use your help to get signatures. And I'm not going to go through how to get them because you guys know, and I'm out of time. So God bless you and Godspeed.
Thanks, Tim. I'm Jeff Myers from Summit in Colorado, and I want you to know in just a moment I'm going to be talking about the legalization of recreational marijuana, which has been a big issue in Colorado. We call it the weed issue. But before I say anything more about that, I'm sorry that our Understanding the Times book, the one I showed you earlier, they sold out in about 5 minutes. So our team over in the gymnasium has agreed if you place your order today and buy the book today at the regular price here, we will ship it to you for free. So if you want one, go ahead and go over and you can get a copy of that book. All right? And I'm sorry that we just didn't think to send enough here. All right, so the weed issue. We faced this in Colorado in 2014, and it has been a disaster ever since. I know you're trying to face the question of whether to sign a petition to have it on the ballot so that it can be legalized. Here is what we were told in the state of Colorado. And by the way, my polling on this was that 60% of Christians voted for the legalization in the state of Colorado. And they voted for it for two reasons. Number one, they were told it's a freedom issue. Now, in the state of Colorado is not a liberal state, but you have to understand it is the birthplace of the Libertarian Party. And people are concerned about their freedom there. So that was their big question. It's a freedom issue. We want the government out of the regulation of the marijuana issue. Particularly, we don't want people going to jail for crimes related to using marijuana. That was the number one issue. And that gained a lot of sympathy in the state of Colorado because it is hard to imagine taxpayers spending $50,000 a year to keep somebody in jail whose biggest crime was they smoked weed. All right. The second thing we were told is this will fund education in the state of Colorado. And I wrote an article about this in our newsletter. I told everybody I could find about this. I had debates and arguments with, some of the proponents of it were conservative Christian homeschool families advocating the legalization of marijuana. It's just not at all what I expected it would be. So people are all over the place on this issue. I can't tell you what to do. if I had some authority in your life, I would say don't even sign the petition to put it on the ballot, because the forces in favor of this are so slick and so devious. They will lie about everything, and it's crazy. Don't even sign the petition is what I would tell you. But I mean, you're going to do whatever you're going to do. So let me tell you our experience. That's what I can tell you. Here's what's happened in the state of Colorado. First thing that happened in the state of Colorado is people were told, if we legalize marijuana, then the black market forces will go away. Let me tell you about a recent, our town, Manitou Springs, Colorado, is the only town in our county where you can buy recreational marijuana legally from stores. There are 2 stores. And by the way, they have a government license. It is essentially a license to print money. I am told between the 2 stores, they are making $35,000 a day. So whoever, whenever there's a government license involved, and it's essentially a license to print money, here's the rule in all of politics for all of human history: there will be corruption, okay? There will be corruption. It's just a matter of time, because people have too much to lose. The government is enforcing their business model and keeping other people out of the business and making sure they profit. There will be corruption. So the other day, our mayor and the city council had a meeting, and they thought the question was, since these stores are so enormously profitable, selling something that up until 2 years ago was illegal, can't we at least increase the level of taxes on it? And the mayor said in the meeting, we can't increase the taxes, because if we do, people will go buy from the black market. And my response was, I thought the black market was gone. Come to find out, the black marketers now sell marijuana, but they know they're not going to be prosecuted for selling it. So they have established a side business selling marijuana to people who don't want to wait in line at the store. But here's the worst part. They have added new products to their inventory, primarily including, and this is an enormous tragedy, black tar heroin. So now people in our community, and by the way, if you legalize marijuana in a community, it's like putting up a sign that says we're open to anything. So now we have relatively inexpensive hotels. People will come there and do all kinds of drugs. 2 of my staff members are firefighters. One is an EMT. And they say the number of calls they have gotten have gone up dramatically of people who've overdosed on heroin. In fact, the term in the local fire department is these people are frequent flyers. Like they're going to the hospital so much for drug-related issues that the ambulances know who they are, where they are, how to pick them up, and all of those things. They go to the hospital, the doctors save their lives, they never pay the bill, they never do anything, they just go back to their little hotel and keep doing drugs. 2 days ago, I found out that we are now dealing with 500 homeless teens who have come, and this is in a town of 5,000 people who are there in our community. Our local high school has now they have now taken a room and established Aspen Point is the drug treatment center for teens in our area. They have established an Aspen Point office in the school to deal with, and none of these children are supposed to be able to buy the drug because it's only for 21 years or older. But the level of drug addiction has gone up so much that we now, in our high school, have to have a drug intervention center in the high school as part of the school. There are a lot of other aspects to this as well. I'm involved in helping in some of the education areas in my community. And so I was recently with a group of people who are interested in education. Now, you've got to keep in mind, Manitou Springs, Colorado is like a Santa Cruz in the mountains of Colorado, right? I mean, it is a hippie town. It very, very much like that. People always, their philosophy is live and let live. In this room were all of the leaders, the business leaders, the people in our community who live in our town and work in Colorado Springs and who are leaders in their corporations, all of the leaders, about 50 or so people in this room. The superintendent was talking about how the state has been shorting us the amount of money we need for our school. Over the last 10 years, $9 million short. And this is a school, we've got 1,000 kids in our town, so this is not a huge school system. So he was talking about that, and one of the guy sitting next to me just raised his hand. He said, "What about the weed money?" because it was all supposed to fund education. And the superintendent looked at the person who was running the PowerPoint show, and she said, and turns out she is sort of the organizer of all of our efforts for it to fund education and figuring out how the budget works and all of that. And she said in this meeting, there is no weed money. And the level of disgust, and this isn't a hippie town where people are, by and large, very liberal. The level of disgust exhibited in that moment was just unbelievable. And come to find out, the city has said, we're not giving you any money because you didn't support the legalization effort. And the state has now, instead of giving money to the schools, they have set up a separate bureaucracy that is accepting grant applications that will be reviewed by some bureaucrat to decide whether or not your school district is one of those that are deserving. So it's turned into a redistributionist scheme. So here's the bottom line. If you believe that whatever the law ends up being like, it will take on the character of the bureaucracy of your state government. If you think they're awesome and you love them, then go right ahead. If you think there might be a problem with that, then serious caution is advised. All right, thank you all.
Wow, well, just a quick follow-up on Dr. Meyer's presentation. If you're looking for a really good scholarly treatment of the marijuana issue, I know if you talk to friends that are libertarian-leaning conservatives, you run into a lot of those same freedom issues. Dr. William J. Bennett, former drug czar, wrote the Book of Virtues, if you guys have read that before. He published earlier this last year a phenomenal book called Going to Pot. And if you get a chance to read it, it is chock full of science and of all of the complete fabrications and hypocrisy that is being used to try and drive this issue nationwide. And it's amazing to think that California would be so foolish as to try and go down this route. So anyway, just a side note. I work for California Family Council, as Gil said, and we are a state affiliate with Family Research Council, with Focus on the Family, and with Alliance Defending Freedom. And I've been on the job for about 18 months, very blessed to work alongside a lot of these great people, especially Karen. Karen actually was one of my mentors when I was in high school, so I know she doesn't look that old, but, okay, thank you. But it's been really fun to be able to go around the state of California these last 18 months and work on lots of different issues related to lobbying and legislation. And I will be honest with you, when I started, even though before I started with this job, I had for the last 11 years before that, from 2003 to 2014, I had worked with a pro-life organization called Right to Life of Central California. So I kind of thought that I was pretty well versed and pretty well schooled in the legislative process and in how things worked in Sacramento. But I have to tell you, after being up there a lot, especially this spring, it is frustrating, and that's putting it mildly for polite company. It is really, really aggravating to be in Sacramento and sometimes feel like your legislators don't listen to you. Would anyone agree with me on that? Did any of you watch the rally on SB 277 outside of the Capitol? I was blown away to see thousands and thousands of people show up at the Capitol to speak out against SB 277, for example. One day I was there for a different bill, and SB 277 had a hearing. There were 500 people lined up in the hall to testify against the bill. And yet, I know that's a good thing, and yet despite all of that grassroots effort, the legislature rushed it through, they voted on it, and Governor Brown signed it the minute it happened. And I think that's because they really do not like hearing from all of us. So there's two responses that you can have to that. Well, three responses you can have to that. No offense to some of our friends either in Colorado or I know there's some people here from Texas. You can move to Texas. But there's something I think we need to remember about that. I don't know about the rest of you, but at least for this point, I feel called to California. Amen? So let me put it this way, using a biblical reference. If California is your Nineveh, don't let Texas be your Tarshish, okay? because that didn't end up so well for Jonah, okay? I'm just saying. Now, if God's really called you to Texas, go, by all means, go. But don't flee to Texas thinking that you're going to get away from what God's call is for you to engage in the system that you're supposed to be involved in. So that's point number one. So don't run. Option number two is you can just stay here and give up, and you can bury your head in the sand and say, you know what, what's the point? Why should we even bother? Like Dr. Turek was saying, well, you know what, I'm going to give up on politics. I'm just going to preach the gospel. Well, he did a pretty good job of debunking that earlier, so I'm just going to move on from that very quickly. We know that's not an option. So what's the third option? Well, it's the title of the conference, Engage. And sometimes it can seem like we are living in some very long odds. Let me tell you about another person who lived in long odds, though. In 605 BC, Daniel and his three friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, better known as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, were exiled and taken into Babylon. And I don't know about you, but California is feeling a little bit more like Babylon than it is like even America at this point. But those four young men did not have the option of going somewhere else. They were taken away from their families, away from the temple, away from their religious rituals, away from their friends, and they were forced to serve in a pagan system, live with pagan rulers, eat pagan food. They were literally cut off from the possibility of having a family in the future. They were completely isolated. And they could have chosen to give up and just surrender to the system. But Daniel 1 verse 8 says, "But Daniel resolved that he would not defile himself." And that's what all of you, by being here today, you guys are not willing to put up with the system that we have. You guys are choosing by being here. You are making a statement that you are resolving that you are going to continue to stand for God's truth, even in the Republic of California. So there's 4 points. I had the blessing of preaching at my home church a couple weeks ago. We're in between pastors right now, and they were so desperate they asked me if I wanted to preach. So I got to preach, and I preached on Daniel chapter 1. And there are 4 very key lessons that I think apply to all of us living in California, Babylon. Number 1, we have to remember that we are not in control of the government. Now, in some places, that's true. You can pass great legislation. But in California, we're facing some difficulty. So we have to remember that and recognize honestly where we're at to start. Number 2, we have to recognize that our government is going to not just suggest, they're going to command that we violate God's word. That's just the fact of where we are at right now in the state of California. Number 3, the third R, we have to, like I said, resolve that we will be faithful. But then there's an important 4th one, and that's we have to redeem the opportunities to influence the government. Daniel did not only say, look, kill me, I'm not going to be involved. He also didn't say, look, I'll go be a janitor, I'll clean the toilets, I'll, go be a farmer or a gardener, but I'm not going to participate. He had been called to stand before the king. And in a citizen republic, in a democracy, you and I are all called to stand before the king. We do not have the option to just say, I'm just going to keep my head down and not be involved. Daniel chose to redeem the opportunities to engage the government, even if the government at that time did not honor God. But if you look throughout the book of Daniel, he kept involved, and eventually Nebuchadnezzar, unwillingly, but finally did acknowledge the God of heaven and earth. So what that means for all of you is you need to get involved in going up and lobbying and engaging with your home legislators. Now, Gina is probably one of the best people that I know that I've ever met that does this. And when they say she's one of the best, when Gil says she's one of the best in the country, he really means that. I've been around the country, and other states would give an arm and a leg to have a person like Gina. So you guys having her here in our community is a huge blessing. So this means that we all need to get involved in issues like the Privacy for All petition and issues like SB 277. You need to sign up for the Capital Resource Institute mailing list. If I could make a humble plug, you should sign up for the California Family Council mailing list. go to the room a little bit later today and make sure that you sign up and get involved. It may take a little bit of time. It may feel in the short run like it is frustrating and difficult, but we can't give up. Let me give you finally, just in closing, an important notice on what it was like for the founders of our country. A lot of times we think about the Declaration of Independence. We just celebrated July 4th. But you guys remember, after that was over. It was smooth sailing. As soon as we just declared our principles and got together in a meeting and signed a document, that's all we needed to do to be a free country, right? Wednesday, April 19th, 1775. That was the shot heard round the world, Lexington Concord. In a lot of ways, I think that June 26th, 2015, for a lot of Christian conservatives, is the shot heard around the world, or the Supreme Court decision, Obergefell, heard around the country. But guess what? It was 1 year, 2 months, 16 days, 443 days from that day to when the Declaration of Independence was signed. But it was an additional 2,618 days until the Treaty of Paris, when the hostilities were over and America had finally won their independence. So what does that mean for us? That means we need to say, in the words of Captain John Paul Jones, who was the founder or the father of the U.S. Navy, when he was facing insurmountable odds in a sea battle, and the captain told him, the British captain said, "You have to surrender, you're outgunned, you're outmatched, give up." Some of you know what he said. He shouted back, "I have not yet begun to fight." And that is where we are right now in a post-Supreme Court decision world, when they say, give up, you've lost, it's over, just go back to your churches and get out of the public square. Our response needs to be, we have not yet begun to fight.
Well, thank you all for being here. It's such a great sight to see people come out to an event that we have planned and worked on so hard. So first, I want to thank the team that helped me organize this event, all volunteers, and just giving hours and hours of their time. So please give them a hand. Just like the panelists here, I have not given up on California. I don't feel called to walk away from this state that I was born and raised in and I love. And I hope you all feel the same way. I think it's worth the fight, and I hope you think the same thing. Our children are worth the fight. If you can be an adult and think that it's okay to allow boys and girls to walk into the same restroom, the same shower and locker room, and be there, and you shouldn't care, that is absolutely crazy. But I know that as we were working on this last campaign, we had people from across the political spectrum endorsing and signing our petition. So please do everything that you can to protect your children, the children that you may not even know, and the future of our state. We need your signatures, and we need you to help us get those signatures. This church is very passionate about preaching the gospel. That comes first. But this church is also very involved in what goes on in our community, our state, and our nation. And Pastor Jack has come to be known as one of the pastors that is bold and courageous and speaking out about these issues. And I know that many of you that do not even attend this church are coming here because you've heard Pastor Jack not only talk about this conference, but you've heard his messages, and you know his willingness to take a stand for some of these issues that are very controversial in our state. Part of what I do at this church is I am his culture impact team leader. I'm the one that monitors the culture, I research legislation, whatever the issue may be. And when he has a question, he can come and ask me, I can give some advice. But I've been very aware of what's going on, so when something comes up like co-ed bathrooms, like trying to redefine marriage, like forced vaccination, I'm the one that goes to tell him what's happening. So if you are from another church, and that's something that you think that you would like to do for your pastor, please come and see me at the Faith and Public Policy table in the gym today. I think that if we had a church that was aware of what is going on in the culture, we would have a different California. Wouldn't you agree with that? If we had churches in every community doing what we do in our community, this nation would be completely different. But we need Christians, all of us together, working on these issues. We can make a difference. We are the children of God. We are the ones that have the Holy Spirit within us. We should know that we should be standing up and speaking up. Let's not fear the government. Let's not fear man. Let's work together prayerfully, humbly. Let's get out into the community and make a difference. So thank you for coming today. Appreciate your time. Please come out to the booth and say hi. Thank you.